here, Free Atlantic Radio. The day's date is what is it, the 8th of December, or excuse me, the 8th of January, 2021. I can't even remember what month it is. And I'm here to do the Friday show, which I'm doing from my cell phone because, well, we'll get into why I'm doing it from my cell phone in a little bit. But anyway, just actually in the comfy chair, which I don't usually get the pleasure of doing. And it does make it a little harder for me to read some of your comments, but today we're going to do something a little different than what I would normally do. I'm going to start my monologue with a story, and then we'll get into the digital long knives version of what's out there. So I'm a little late. I'm here at 8 p.m. because I was taking a nap, and that's part of the story, actually. My car is sitting in a snowbank right now, not working because who knows, cars break. That's what it is. And our car has given us a good run, but I think it's reached the end of its road. And I think next week I'm going to be getting a new car. Let's put it that way. Or maybe not a new car, but a car that functions. So yours truly is, a little incapacitated at the moment. And it's been a long, cold, exasperating, frustrating day. But a lot of people have experienced that. And I guess that's why the show ended up being a little different than I wanted to. Today was going to be an episode about hope and planning and all that, but it's kind of hard to feel that when everything's going nuts around you. And I guess that's where I want to start the story today. I'm going to do it a little bit different than we usually do on the show tonight. Do a little more personal narrative today just to open things up, and then we'll go into some events because I've been peeking around the net and I know you have questions and I have thoughts. So, um, it's funny though. In the end, the Friday show this Friday was supposed to be about one simple question, and the question I had hoped to cover was that I wanted to know what it was we could do to resist everything that was happening. Then, and by resist, I don't mean necessarily. It's not good to define yourself in opposition to things. It's good to define yourself through what you are, and that's what I think is a key point of it. What we are doing, like here in the Atlantic homeland, what do we talk about? We talk about reason, nature, grace, and loyalty. Instead of going out and saying, "Hey, we're going to cancel everything that's this or that," I could spew anti-commie invective all day long. I've read Marx, and I can do it better than most people. I don't do it because I don't think it's particularly helpful to do it that way, and I'm not a fan of communism, and Lord knows I'm not a fan of Karl Marx, mainly because unlike most people in school today, I actually have read the works. But the one thing I've noticed is, and this is the hardest part, and tell me if you're feeling what I'm saying, but we live in a world where people get punished for the good things they do. When I was working in New England, when I first moved to New England, I moved from Pennsylvania because I wanted something different, and we moved to rural New Hampshire. And I took a job and I worked for a government contractor for a while. And I'll tell you, it was a job where we did a lot of shady things and there weren't a lot of questions asked. And a lot of money was transferred back and forth from different things. And no one ever bothered to question that because it was the system. It's the way things worked. It wasn't even worth questioning because everyone went home happy. And after working there several years, and I was very good at it, to be very clear, but it was like it sucks the soul out of you to do things that were wrong. And that's why I chose to move to the middle of nowhere. Literally, actually, I used to tell the joke when I lived in Jackman. I don't live in the middle of nowhere. I live in the end of nowhere. You literally were, I think we used to tell it we were, what, 70 miles from the nearest stoplight, unless you wanted to go into Canada. And even then, it was 45 miles, to our good friends in Saint George. It was just, actually, there's one south of there. But in any case, we moved there and I decided in a small town, I was just going to try to do things that were right and true. And, what did I get attacked for? Well, I got attacked for saying that people who have totally different beliefs, didn't fit in. And it's true. And I got attacked for defending the people who were actually there, who had been there for generations, whose families had put down roots because, yeah, they were white. And I said, fine, they're white. What's wrong with that? And then they attacked me and they made me this horrible human being because I believed in Western civilization and then because I believed in our heritage and I believed in all these things. And I'm watching what's happening now. And what I see is that over and over again, the world punishes you not for your vices, but your virtues. If you're a prostitute who goes around celebrating the fact that you're a whore, or if you're a thief who talks about all the clever ways you rob people, you'll probably get a show, you'll get a TV show, you'll be applauded on Twitter. But if you try to stand up for virtue or righteousness, the Lord, you want to be hated, go stand up for the Lord Jesus Christ. Go into a room, a big room, and say, you know what? The Lord says that there are things that are right and wrong, and they say, well, who are you to tell me it's not me? It's that there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And if you ever want to know if you're doing the right or wrong thing, look at the way the world is treating you. If the world is treating you like a baby treats a diaper, you're probably doing the right thing. And that's the way this world works. And why the world should work that way is a long, complicated conversation. It goes back to the Garden of Eden, and we could have that conversation. But I think tonight, I wanted to try to find a way to the most precious of commodities, the one that evades so many of us, myself very much included, and that's hope. Because I sit here so many nights, so many evenings working on solutions to things. I mean, you can see the giant bookshelf there and all that, and there's a lot more where that came from where I could show you, where I'm just looking and reading and seeking solutions and looking through the past and trying to figure out what's right and what we can do. But we have the Confederacy of dunces out there screaming ignorantly, shut them down, wear that mask, don't say this, don't think, don't talk, just act and respond. And they're winning. And they're winning because they're vile and they're crude, and because the people who want otherwise have this moment of pause where we sit and we ask, maybe can we help them? Maybe can we say, is there a way we can do what's right? And I talk to so many decent people who get restrained and stopped at the point where it's just things aren't right and they don't know how to deal with it because they're good and they're moral and they're decent. And those of us who are good and moral and decent, including people who just went to DC to go ahead and say, hey, Capitol, will you consider the election? No, we won't consider it. The media says, oh, you lied. That guy won. The courts say, we're not going to look at this evidence. What evidence? And what they do is they gaslight you. And we are dealing with the great gaslighting of our time. We're dealing with the Twitter lockdown. I mean, you saw Trump got kicked off Twitter. That's crazy. A president of the United States got beat up by social media. And who's funding social media? They have such deep pockets to do this. Is it Xi Jinping? Is it the Rothschilds? I mean, who is it? I mean, are we at the point now where we get to pick and choose? Or rather, I should say it differently. Let me say this differently. What would I say? That literally people get shut down just by people who are censors for them? This is the future? This is what we're going to have? And we're not even there yet? Why are they doing this? I mean, yes, they want to have us in a fight. That's obvious, because if they want to put the country back together, Joe Biden should be out there giving some smarmy speech where, hey, we're all going to come together and here's your check and be happy. And this is an organized takedown. I don't know how else to say it. We are seeing the world we know destroyed. But you know what? It's not news. It's the continuation and acceleration of what we've seen for a long time. Some of us joke about being accelerationists, and we got in trouble for that with the FBI and other things. You want to talk about the ultimate accelerationist? How about the media? Let's find fire and just put it in nuclear levels. They'll just destroy anyone who opposes them and attack them because they don't see any pushback. And you know what? Maybe they're right. Maybe there isn't any. But I think at some point, people are being pushed to a point where they're just not going to be able to stand anymore. And they will push back and they will fight back. And they should fight back. What do you want me to tell you? I mean, you've made people who are so bullied. You know what it's like? The right wing in America is like Ralphie in the Christmas story. That one kid comes and picks on him every day. And Ralphie just goes home and he tries to do the right thing. And he puts on his little glasses. And if you haven't seen the movie, you should. He puts on his little glasses. And one day, he's had enough and he just gets on top of it. He's like, bah, 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 bah. And that's where we're at, because you know what? You don't give people another option. You don't give them a way out. You don't give them the decency that maybe there's some integrity to their opinions if you disagree with them. And the opinions that are put out there, I'm just going to be honest with you, are garbage. The idea of what the mass culture wants, well, you can believe anything you want as long as it's nothing good. I mean, it's evil. We live in an evil society. Well, that's all right, Salt Girl. It's okay that you're late. I'm late too. We're all definitely late. And Raven writes, and I'm going to interact with you a little more than I do usually because I have to do this. You're absolutely right, Raven, that Xi Jinping offered to send 250,000 UN peacekeepers to help prop up the new Biden regime. And I wouldn't be surprised if he'd take it. If you start seeing blue helmets in the countryside, next thing you're going to see are hot shots coming in. And maybe that's what they want. Every provocation, every idea, everything you could do. And what I don't understand is where the hatred comes from. And when I say hatred, people say, oh, they hate this, they hate that. People who are on the right wing, by and large, good to see you, Shane, by the way. And this may be my last broadcast here, by the way. Everything's getting shut down. If you haven't bought my book from Amazon, better do so now because, it's not going to be long before you can't get that information. I'll put digital copy out there, of course, and we'll do things. And by the way, if you haven't followed me on Telegram, follow me. Even if you don't join the Atlantic Homeroom chat or the Atlantic Homeland chat, go in there. You can find me in there, or find me at Tom Kaczynski. You can see how it's spelled underneath here, so that you have an idea. Because we're not going to be here very much longer. Twitter's shutting everyone down. Facebook is shutting things down. You see that they're going to shut down 4chan? I mean, if you shut down 4chan, you are going to unleash autism to all sorts of weird places. They went to Cloudflare, and they're shutting everything down. And you see the money is doing this, and it has to be the money. I do, Raven, absolutely. Make sure you send me a text too, by the way, so I remember which one is yours. But yeah, you have mine as well. And if you guys need to find a way to reach me directly, I ain't that hard to find. I'm up here in Maine, I'm doing my thing up here in Greenville, and able to be reached very easily. But what I was saying is that the shutdown is crazy. Let's talk news for just 1 second. So Trump got banned from Twitter, as did Sidney Powell, as did Lynn Wood, as did a lot of people. Permabanned. They permabanned the leader of theoretically the most powerful country in the world, and he's still there for a few days, but he's not allowed to, because they. At the same time, you see people arguing that literally that people's lives should be destroyed. And look, they have made their decision. They are all in on the Great Reset. You saw that Joe Manchin, Democrat, from West Virginia, said that he's going to hold up the stimulus checks until everyone gets their vaccine. So I'm sure he got a nice, healthy bribe, because I know a lot of West Virginians, and they're more likely than to drown him in moonshine and be happy with that. But that family's going to have to deal with the consequences of that. And as people, what are we going to do? And I guess that's the question to this. And it's the thing is, when you feel no hope, when you feel despair, it's so hard to organize. But well, I guess we have to, right? We have to find a way. Like, I wasn't going to do a show today. I was sitting here feeling miserable, feeling sorry for myself. Dana came down here and she cheered me up. She gave me a wonderful glass of tea that's still scalding hot. So we'll get to it after the show. We'll see how long I go. It might only be a half hour today, because my throat is not good, and I've been dealing with the elements today, and it hasn't been a pleasant day. But there were things that needed to be said, so here I am, like an old grandpa with my Santa Claus beard, old and tired, and not wanting fights that are coming to us, and not knowing how to run from them, because we're sitting there, and the wife and I are talking to one another, and we're like, a big part of us just wants to sit back and sit out of the way. I mean, don't we all, right? And we sit there and think about, like, what are we doing? Are we agreeing to be the last ones taken out? Are we going to be the kulaks hiding in Siberia that go ahead and just have a walking trip to the gulag? And I'm just like, that's not good enough. And I guess your perspective on it varies. Like, my wife's perspective, by and large, is that we are in the tribulation, or we're coming into it anyway. We not exactly be into it if you want to get all biblical about it, but that the only hope we have is Christ. And that's true, because people are rotten. I agree with that. You should devote at least as much energy to your eternal salvation as you do the drama of this world, and recognize that we've been experimenting with weird and funny things, where things that are demonic may be coming back into the picture. Perhaps it will explain why we're fighting against these strategies, which make it so impossible for us to work together, and which seem to double down on things that make no sense by any worldly wisdom, because it's not about seeking power through ownership. We're really seeing a system that seeks power through destruction at this point, and it's a very strange thing. I haven't seen that too much. Good to see you, Zach, and welcome to everyone who's here, by the way. It's going to be a comfy chat tonight. I hope you don't hold that against me. Sometimes I come in, I get the full theatrics, I go in there, I bang out the show, but at this point, it's taking all the effort I can just to sit here. I got my little Nordique shirt on, hanging out with you guys, and we're just going to talk a little bit. And Revelation 12:4 was September 23rd, 2017. I heard that, Raven. There was a lot of people who were talking about that with the, what was it? It was the astronomical configuration where, what was it? Jupiter went into Virgo in retrograde or something. I mean, people who are really powerful care about occultism. They care about these sort of things. And if you study it, and you can study it, I'll admit I haven't done my best studying lately, because I've been too busy trying to survive, and maybe wallowing a bit in my own pity. Maybe that's true, because I want to do more. I've been wanting to do a lot more, but, like, what do you do to do more? I mean, how do you trust people? How do you organize it? I guess that's where we really have to go with this. It's not enough to be against things. You have to figure out what you're for and what you're about, and have beliefs you believe in. And I have just gotten Dana's not here, so I'll curse. I have got my ass kicked for years fighting for things I thought was right. I got run out of town in Jackman, even though a majority of the people agreed with me, because someone came in and said, well, you're not allowed to think that. And then I go to Greenville, and, then people are still harassing me over my books, getting me shut down from platforms. I try to get involved in politics, and the Republicans make sure I'm not allowed to have a voice. I mean, honestly, I only got my PayPal shut down when I actually end up talking to Republicans. Isn't it funny how that works? And all because I've had sort of simple ideas, which is that you should care for the people around you. The people who've been in a place have a right to it, and that some of the ideas of our civilization had some meaning. And I just got wrecked every time, and no one stood with me except maybe my wife and a few close people. And there were some people who stepped in and who helped at different times. Bob stepped in, and some other people, who you see in this chat who've been longtime friends and fans. And I'm grateful for that, by the way. I appreciate that very much. But it's like we've gotten to the point where you're not allowed to have sanity as your position. You have to conform. We are dealing with red guards. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? This is textbook Maoism. Should I get up and get the book on Mao? Would you like me to read? Maybe I should read that. Maybe that would be the most useful thing. I mean, I'm sure it's approved logic on this on YouTube at this point, or on Twitter or on Facebook. And people want something different. I mean, I could tell you all these games about how they were gaming the algorithm. I mean, there was a really good episode of, if you guys follow Adam Marfugel News, he did a really good one called Insurrection over on D Live, about what happened. And they were breaking down what happened on the Capitol, and all that. And the more I've looked at it, the more I've become convinced not only is it a false flag, which I thought, and I argued to you that this was being used by the deep state in a way, but the people who were going in there were in fact permitted in there, and the people who were being most heavily prosecuted in a lot of ways were people who were welcomed in there. They had waiting photographers. Like, some of you may have seen that picture where the two guys are sitting there with the guns pointed really seriously in defense of the chamber. Why is a photographer sitting right there ready to take that picture if it's a moment's notice, if this is something, or the guy with the legs kicked up in Pelosi's office, or the guy in the speaker's seat with the Viking thing? I mean, doesn't at some point, don't you wonder how it is that we can go through and all these selfies were perfectly arranged away, and yet then they were able to come together, and just a few hours later, these grand rhetorical speeches about how every Democrat was explaining how the right was horrible and every Republican threw their people under the bus. I mean, honestly, I ain't seen a bigger group of Judases this side of a meeting of the Sanhedrin. I mean, what can you look for? I mean, it's just absolutely crazy how that actually worked out. And I went back and I watched some of their self-righteous pontificating speeches, and these people represent no one. I mean, I hate to say it, but this was a coup of the government against the people, okay? And it's bigger than Trump, and it's this idea that they do not want you to have a say in how you live, and they are going to begin enforcing it, and they are going to silence you, shut you down, and take away your ability to exist. And they want this because they want it to be torn down, because then they can rebuild it. And they're going to go ahead and look for the people who comply, and they're going to go ahead and put them at a level they can be controlled, and then they're going to come after the people who are difficult in the country. What always follows the digital night of long knives. Now people can't get the word out. Let's say that we go forward and you shut down all these other versions. If they start grabbing leaders and putting them in camps somewhere, how would you even know the difference? And who's going to question it? Well, the FBI's out there saying it's terrorism. I have a lot of people who listen to this broadcast who live in the world of intelligence and of law enforcement at the federal level. You guys all here, listen to me. We need you to step up and start arresting the people who are theoretically writing your paychecks. The people would love you. They would demand it, and they can't do it for themselves. And you're going to have to make a choice about what you actually are there for. Are you there to get a check, or are you there to go ahead and do something different? And look, you don't have to believe in my ideology. You can be the most pro-American constitutionalist patriot. I abandoned this country because it abandoned me a long time ago. I looked under the hood of the car and saw what it was actually spewing out, and I'm going to continue doing that. I'm going to be a separationist. I'm going to be a secessionist. I'm going to work for a free Maine, and I'm going to work here in Piscataqua County, talking to anyone and everyone who will listen, to say that we can't be a part of what's coming forward. And I'm not talking to people who are white or black. I'm not talking to people who are left or right wing. I'm talking to people in communities who don't want to be told how to live every aspect of their life and to be punished when they don't conform. I don't want to talk to people who want to be used as pincushions for big pharma profit margins. I don't believe in that. I'm not talking to people who want to believe that they're going to be radiated by all these forms of technology who we don't even know what they're about, and yet they get blanket immunity from lawsuits and prosecutions. I mean, what world are we living in? Why are we being treated as meat and as cattle? And yet we are going along with this passively and accepting it. And it's not good enough. And look, I mean, I hate to be the guy. I don't want to be the guy out here fighting these things. I want to be the guy who sits at home writing comfy books. And yeah, but someone's got to do it, don't we? We got to do something. We can't just accept this tacitly. And, the wife tells me all we can do sometimes is sit back and wait for Christ to come. And maybe she's right. Maybe these are just the temptations to lead us into different sins. I sit and I wonder sometimes very sincerely, if this world isn't one big play where all we are doing is led into temptations. I'm led into temptations of pride and vanity, thinking that one guy can make a difference in a world that that's gone astray. But I don't know. You guys tell me. How do you feel tonight? How do you feel when you look at the world? I mean, we're talking, right? We're talking to each other, I guess, and I don't have all the answers. I wish I did. I talk to people a lot. I talk to a lot of people on the ground, and I know people who hate me listen to this broadcast. I know who you are, by the way. Hell is waiting for you, and you know who you are. You know exactly who you are. You are worse than Judas, that one person who just goes and tries to destroy churches and families and people. And one day there'll be justice, and justice does come. By the way, the world is fair. It just takes a much longer time frame than our lives can allow. I really do believe that. I have to believe that for my own sanity, if nothing else. And the good book says that, the Lord will serve justice. And justice that we put on other people, where we fight one another over what we think is right, it would be great if we could talk about what was right rather than who was right. It would be great if we could work out some things. And I've always thought there could be a new center. People deserve to have a little bit of a ground to fall back on financially to survive, and not to be sloughing away their whole life making a penny. That's not good. But on the other hand, living in a world that's completely amoral, where there's no tradition, there's no family, there's no continuity, it makes us trapped. I mean, we're trapped in our own despair, and technology's made it so much worse. Maybe I need to do more comfy chats like this, because we talk about big ideas, but it's not the big ideas that are going to save us. It's the little ideas. It's going to be the ability of us to connect to one another and to talk. And that's what the internet started out with. It always starts out that way with technology. TV was going to educate us and made us into morons. The internet was going to connect us. Yeah, it's made us hate one another. I mean, all of these technologies, the answer to the problems is human interaction. It's that we need to be able to work with one another wherever we are and whomever we are. Whether you're in Kentucky, see Joseph, or elsewhere, if you're in Maine, and we're gonna have to do that, and we're gonna have to show some courage and some gumption. And I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, Fat Face, you're right. That Parlor and Gab, and I know a lot about Andrew Torba. I mean, I know way more than I should, because I was there at the beginning, and that's not really an answer. But the internet isn't an answer. See, that's what the problem is. The answer, they're going to beat us in high tech. Well, fine, then we'll have to beat them in low tech. The answer is, the street I live on, I talk to my neighbors regularly. I go ahead and we have these conversations, and we talk about what's important, and we build our own technologies, and we make ourselves self-sufficient, and we reach the point where we say, hey, we can do things on our own. And once you say you have that power, this is the power people lack, right? We were taught we have to be the best at things, and we have to specialize in things, and we have to conform to things, and we have to pay for things, and all these things, and we've become beholden to a million different things. There was an old quote, I forget who said it, it was a Roman, I think, that said, a man of ambition is a slave to everyone who can advance his ambitions. That every is he was said better said than that, because Romans are good at their rhetoric, but it's just one of those things where, and Telegram is better, by the way. I agree. At Tom Kaczynski is my Telegram. If you're not there, you ought to be. I mean, seriously, figure it out. Some people like Signal. I'm not a fan of that as much, mainly because of who congregates there. And Wire isn't bad if you want a tertiary choice, but Wire has this weird thing where it takes forever to download all its old information. It was unworkable on my phone, and I'm on an iPhone for what it's worth. I mean, even though these things are horrible too. So, and I forgive me, I'm not sitting in the studio. I'm in a study today because I felt like being comfy, and I just didn't have the heart to be not comfy. And because I think days are coming we're not going to be comfy, and I think a fight is coming. And it's weird because I think you were saying it, Raven, or maybe someone else was, just talking about the Chinese being involved. America's being destroyed. It's very important to understand that. Yeah, I have no doubt of that at this point. I don't know how fast it's going to happen. I know that we are not the country we used to be. You could feel it in the air. I was actually out today. I was in Augusta, actually. I'll say that, and it's just there's something off. There's something misses. Missing rather. Good to see you, Patches. Glad you're here with us this evening as we sit here in the old command bunker and kind of figure out how to go forward with it. But here's what I'm thinking, and you tell me if it makes sense. And I'll just put it out there because I say things publicly that this is where it is. It does seem a bit like Charlottesville, doesn't it? In fact, it's a lot like Charlottesville. They learned lessons from Charlottesville about what they could do and what they could get away with. Yeah, you'll have to figure out. You're gonna have to be an insurgent now. You're gonna have to figure out how to survive on the fringes. I was one of the refugees from the old alt right, and that's going to be it. But I mean, the thing is, it's funny you say that, Fat Face. There's one. All right, so let's talk about what government is for a second. Government is the usage of force as a monopoly to compel people to action. That's all it is. You really need to understand that. We have all these grandiloquent ideas that are put around this and over this. What it is that people are using force against you. And the way you win this battle is simple. You have to be willing and able to employ enough force in response to stop that. And what is force? Is force violence? In one sense, it is, but it can be moral force. It can be it could be people force. It could be if you have 5 million people saying to five guys with guns, put your guns down or this is over, they should theoretically put it over. And that's one of the things that has to happen. And that's one of the reasons why the strategy that's being employed tonight is being used, that all these different platforms are being destroyed, taken down, made difficult to reach. The whole mobile platform network. Not just on that. I read that Google is taking Parler off its app store. People always talk about how Apple is so selective and Google is so tolerant. Google's no better. A duopoly is no better than a monopoly. It's the same thing between the Soviet Union and the US, communism and capitalism. Secular dialectical materialist philosophies where it's not about what's good or what's healthy. And we see this over and over again. But if you're going to fight through these things, which is what we have to do now, and we have to fight through it, because if you sit here and you wait to be picked off or you go along with it, maybe you can hide on the reservation. Maybe you don't draw attention to yourself, but ultimately your ideas die, your people die, your soul dies, and you have to decide instead you're going to have animus and vigor and energy and will for it. Even if you don't feel it, especially if you don't feel it. Demoralization is part of this game. And, Raven's talking about DNS servers. Let's talk about Cloudflare, too. Cloudflare going after 4chan is very big. They're taking the rudiments of the internet and making it not work. And they're going to do the same thing with finance, too. The bankers go to the payment processors. That goes back to JP Morgan Chase. It goes back to the Fed, man. All these things connect back to the top. And someone is basically yanking the strings off all the puppets around our necks, pulling around like this, and hanging us. I know Steve Bannon War Room got banned from YouTube today, and a lot of people were listening to War Room. I think he had the right to say what he wanted to. I think Steve is a very smart guy who's a little bit of a grifter. I think that's a problem. And he gets a lot of money from the Taiwanese. That's the Falun Gong people run Epic Times and whatnot and NTD News. You need to know who actually owns your media sources, and that's why they're so rabidly anti-China. Now, to be fair, they're usually honest about it. China's bad enough that all you have to do is print the truth. It tells its own story. But you ought to know the bias of your own news, and if they're willing to stand where others won't, it's because if they don't, they're going to end up being a province where they all get killed. And that's kind of what seems to have been suggested. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't think that Pelosi and Biden are worried about elections, to be honest with you. I mean, didn't we just see that an election was fixed and nobody cared to do anything about it? If the media says it wasn't fixed and the court refuses to hear the case and the evidence just disappears, I mean, you can literally show suitcases in the nights and dump trucks running around. Nobody's going to do anything. And why don't people do anything? It's because we are helpless. And this is the truth. We have to own this. We are helpless. Technology has made us helpless. Our comforts have made us prisoners to our own desires. I mean, as surely as an ancient, sultan in a palace in a harem sitting around couldn't move and do things, we ultimately are in the same boat. And we keep counting, and like Raven says, Trump does have till the 20th to do something, and maybe someone's finally gotten to him and said, the Rubicon is where you're drowning at this point. You either have to cross it or do something. But, he could just as easily be in on it. Do we know if he's in on it? Did he didn't anticipate what was happening, that he wasn't equal to the challenge? Does it really matter? What matters is we don't have heroes out there to save us, and we keep waiting for a hero because that's the fairy tale. And it's not going to be hero. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be people individually rebuilding their communities, rebuilding connections, rebuilding networks, and in some areas, maybe a couple sheriffs stand up, a couple people with them, and this is what we're going to have to do going forward. So here's what I think I'm going to do in Maine, and this is just a thought, and I'm not saying I'm. I think eventually what is going to happen is people are going to have to organize themselves. Men are going to have to be men again, and they're going to have to organize themselves in defense of their basic principles, including the right not to be poked, prodded, robbed, or stolen from, and simply say, if you come in here, this is going to be a no-go zone for you. And that's what's going to happen. There's going to be autonomy. There isn't the energy to actively resist and go up top and try to take everything down. There isn't the political awareness and it means to communicate to do it other than that. But if we go ahead and start community by community and connect community to community and say, you're not doing this here, you're not doing that there might be some strength and some courage left. You know, Concord and Lexington were not large towns. They were little, things outside Massachusetts where there were like, I think there was like 110 people on the grounds at Concord when that happened, or Lexington rather. I've been up there, it's sacred ground. Um, and people are just gonna have to say no, and what do you say no to? All the things that are wrong. You say no to the lockdown, you just say no to the mandated mask. You don't, support the businesses that go the other way. You say no to this idea that things are going to be taken from you anymore, and that's great, Joseph, I love that, secession by disconnection, because I could go up here and I could tell you how to run a perfect insurgency, but we don't have the people to do it. Where's the soldiers? Where's the leaders? You don't have the basic identity. I've worked for years on building national identity, at a local level, and people don't want to do it. People want to fight for what's at the center because we're scared. And it's okay to be scared, by the way. I'm scared too. I'm terrified. I mean, I don't, we're making this up from scratch, and it's going to be one of these things where, uh, it's just, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't have all the answers. And you know what? I have to treat it as a liberating hope. I have to think of it, in this way. I have to say, the Lord will look favorably upon us if we do which is right according to his word. And that's my first instruction, that, if you get right with God and you're doing the right things for the right reasons, you have to trust that good things will happen. And even if bad things happen, if you are lost to the world, then the world is the one who loses, not you. You understand that, and that's what it is to be a grown up and an adult and a human being. It's the risks you take for what you think is right, and I've done that. And my Quebecois friend Sebastian always says, that the heart of a monarch is one that's open, that bleeds so easily, and yet still somehow finds something to go forward. And I don't know. I don't know why I keep coming back to this. I don't make money. It makes me miserable. I mean, I'm smart. I get offers to do things. I'd have to do them quietly, but people like the intelligence. And yeah, I keep coming back to you guys because I'm just like, something bothers me. Like this idea we could do something better and we could achieve something. And it's not like I want to make it about me, but let's talk about this. So Samsung writes, no future election can be trusted. Look, elections are a fraud. They're a sham. They always were, but now it's really obvious. So can we get past democracy? All these people out there praying for democracy, I'm not fighting for democracy. Why would I fight for democracy? Democracy is the easiest system to buy and own. I'm fighting for a system where people have choices. In New England, it works pretty good. Let me tell you how it works, because you guys probably don't know. We have something called town meeting, where whoever's in charge there, sometimes as a town manager, sometimes as a board, there's different things. They once a year have to go before the full populace of the town, and the populace of the town votes item by item, saying keep this or don't keep this, and that's it. It's simple. It's democratic a little bit in that people have a say. It's a little bit organized in that someone has to bring it there and it has to work within a system. You argue it, you debate it, people hear it, and you walk around and you go home. And that works, and you don't have fights over it. People get mad and there's disagreements, but at the end of the day, if you don't like that town, you move to the next town and you can be happy neighbors because you have good fences. And it's a better system. It's the core of the New Albion system. We went ahead and we basically took what New England did well. We got rid of the corrupt governors, and I will tell you, there's so many corrupt governors. Janet Mills is terrible. It's not just Democrats either. I can't think of a governor I like up here. What's his name? Phil Scott is a sellout who basically got in there as a Republican and then destroyed the gun lobby that the Democrats could never do in Vermont. What's his name? Sununu over in New Hampshire. Someone who basically inherited on his daddy's name and who doesn't have the courage to do anything except just sit there like your average. Or Baker down in Massachusetts, who goes ahead with every little lockdown imagined. Or the Karen, I forget what her name is, the one who's down there in Rhode Island. Or even Connecticut. Connecticut's got the senator who lied about being in Vietnam, and he still gets reelected because, hey, he's a Democrat and you don't do otherwise in the nutmeg state. That's New England for you, and I'm not even getting into New York. You want to talk about Cuomo, Wolf, and all those terrible people? I mean, we got terrible leadership down here. And you know what? We're given terrible leadership. We're not terrible people. The Northeast has some of the best and brightest people in the world, and we've just learned to look the other way. And that's what we all do. We look the other way because, hey, there's money in it or it's not our problem. We got to stop looking the other way, ladies and gentlemen. We can't do that anymore. We have to have the courage to stand up and say something's right. We have to say things that are awful, like that faggotry is an abomination. I know you're not allowed to say that. I just said it. This channel may get shut down for it, but I'm sorry. And I don't say it because I hate gay people. I say that because behaviors we commit. I like liquor. I like weed. I like a lot of things. Me going around as a drunk and a stoner isn't helpful. And people, I would hope people would have enough courage to say to me, yeah, Tom, you don't need to do that every day. And even if I did that as a leisure activity, which is my right, I'll own that, it doesn't make things better. Going around destroying families because you have a sexual predilection doesn't make life better. You hate the sin, not the sinner, but you're not allowed to say that anymore. You're not allowed to say anything is bad except things which are actually good. You have to say families are bad. You have to say the connections are bad. Our history is bad. Anything that affirms and is uplifting and is useful to life is considered terrible. And it's just like, no. I mean, I'd rather have a crusade about it. I really would. And you know what? Look, the paradigm may come after me, and I don't really give a shit if they shut me down. I really don't, because who knows, this might be my last blast, because they're going to go after everyone, and it's only my relative anonymity that keeps me safe, because sometimes I say things, maybe because I spoke against Trump. Why? Because he wasn't getting the job done. What's the worst case scenario for this coming decade? That China comes in here because they want to have food, that our government lets them in because we owe them debts, and that people who go against this are put to camps because, hey, they don't want to take a vaccine or something, and we get picked off one by the night. Or maybe we have a zombie disease. I mean, look, you don't want to know my scenarios of what I imagine is a worst case scenario. If I wrote books about that, you'd think Stephen King was unable to even show any imagination. I'd make The Stand look like a fairy tale. But I don't do that because that's not helpful. I mean, I guess I could. I mean, do you need to be more scared? Do you need to be more frightened? Or do you need some hope? You need some hope, man. I need some hope. I don't have a lot of hope sometimes. I have the willingness to go down as a martyr in the last stand. I have that. I have that crazy Hussar, Slavic thing going on that we can do that. But I struggle with the other stuff, and I'll even say I struggle with my faith a little bit, not because I have any less faith in God, but because when the world is so crazy, that still small voice gets lost, and I struggle to hear it sometimes. I listen to people who gleefully exult in the rottenness they're doing, and rather than just waiting for the Lord's justice, a part of me almost wants to be worse than they are, and I could be. Oh God, you guys have no idea. You sit there. It's like those old cartoons. You have the little angel on one shoulder and the little devil on the other shoulder, and I'm sure we all have. Or maybe you guys don't. Maybe this is just me. Who knows? I shouldn't assume. But it's just like you sit there and you watch these things happening out there, and you watch that, and let's call it what it is. It's desecration, is it not? You see everything that you loved and you cherished and that you ultimately cared about just is utterly wrecked from you. And yeah, look, the Q people, they did some good research, but honestly, they followed a Pied Piper, and I didn't like it, and I knew it was wrong. And look, anyone who promises you an easy solution is full of shit. It's just the way it is. And I'm sorry if I'm cursing tonight and offending people, but I'm just like, this is how I actually talk. This is how I actually am in real life. I like to sit back. Once upon a time, I was a funny, nice kid who sat and made puns and read a whole bunch of books and just liked to talk about that. But this world has now allowed us to be these simple things. I like to be charming and nice, and people who meet me always think, oh, he's not as terrifying as that. No, I'm not terrifying. I'm actually a nice person. I actually am. And sometimes it kills me even more. Sometimes I wish I was the monster they think I was, because then I wouldn't feel bad about the sort of things that might need to be done. But what does it do if we all destroy one another? Because that's what we set up to. Who is out there building something? Who is out there building the fortress that can resist the barbaroi at the gates? The barbarians are here, and they look a hell of a lot like us. And we're going to have to start rebuilding our civilization from scratch because it's been stolen. We have to reclaim our faith and own it with pride and courage. We have to reconnect with our families and go ahead and not allow and have multi-generational living. I mean, not we don't have to all live under the same roof, but we have to take care of our things where we grow food for ourselves. I farm. You guys have seen some of those things. I'm sure we'll have some pictures this year of some of the things we put out there. And I, I joke with Dana. We spent several $1,000s building up our growing area to get about $500 worth of vegetables between deer and other things. And you know what? It was a learning experience. We were blessed enough to have the opportunity to learn, to work the earth, and to now have an opportunity because this year we might not have that margin, but the knowledge we gained was invaluable. And I think that's another piece of this that people are afraid to fail. Failure is part of success. Failure is the learning methodology by which people actually gain the ability to succeed. I've gotten my teeth kicked in 100 times, and I'm going to get them kicked in 100 times more, but I haven't quit. And that's all you got left at some point that you keep going at it. And, the wife said that to me today. She said, you can't quit. She's tough. She's tougher than I am. She wakes up every day to a disease that makes her body like a prison. And she thinks sometimes that I miss that, but I don't. I know she is. I know she's fighting her own battle. And she gets up, and sometimes her battle is just to get into, to walk 10 feet because sometimes her leg doesn't work, and sometimes she falls down, and sometimes that. And on the one hand, it breaks me, but on the other hand, it inspires me. And, she's such a brave lady. And I don't know why she sticks with me. She could have had things easier. But then again, I guess I do have my redeeming moments at times, but it's, I don't know. Let's see what old school counselor says. If the alt right had the numbers Trump had now, we would take a different approach in 2017 after the deep state manipulation. What can nationalists and their leaders do now to change the narratives? I don't know. And nationalist leaders have to find people who are willing to go ahead and resist the violence that's going to be imposed upon them by the state. You are now dealing with the reign. I was telling my wife this, and I think this is the best model. We are now dealing with Prince John taking over from King Richard, okay? And when Prince John was there, the people loved Robin Hood. So how do you end up fighting this? You can't win by fighting the globalists at their level. You're not going to win the media narrative solution. You have to win the hearts and minds of the people. When they lie, you share truth. And we can do that on the underground. We do that very well because the more they shut things down, the more people will look for those answers. But what happens is, as people go into poverty, maybe we need to go ahead and get past ideology and look to the welfare of people. Robin Hood was willing to go out there to rob the rich to help the poor. If you could rob the Fed, you'd be a folk hero forever. Maybe that's where we should have been besieging those stupid banks. Maybe we should have, because that's what's caused a lot of this. You want to know when things started to shift? We could go back to look to the Occupy movement, and that scared the system because they were challenging the nature of it. And that's one of the reasons they like cryptocurrency, because on the one hand, it's not traceable when you do it, but it's not traceable when they do it, and they don't want to see their fingers in there because you hear these formulas exist and whatnot, but do we really know what games they can play with technology? And the answer to high tech is always low tech. The answer to these challenges to food scarcity is farming. The answer to how they're shutting down our nationalist leadership is to build new nations that have better meaning. People's loyalty goes to people who deserve it, and we who want to lead have to gather those who are willing to fight and who are willing to stand and build support networks and say, we're going to do something different. And that's what I'm going to do up here in Maine. And I recommend you do that in your county, in your state. And you know what? If enough of us do that in enough places, we will be able to resist. And I will tell you one thing you have to break. The law is not your friend. In the Bible, Christ came to take us away from the bounds of legality. If you've never watched it, especially if you're a Christian, and I know it's animated and you're going to laugh, go watch Pilgrim's Progress or read the book even better. But the movie's actually pretty good for this. What you see is there's this scene where Christian, which is the name of the pilgrim, gets led astray in this idea of legality where he's thinking if he just follows the right laws, he'll find salvation. And what he finds is every law leads to another law, and a law you can't break, and you're constantly to the point where you work yourself into circles to try to solve things. In the Old Testament, I think there's only two people who are taken up to heaven directly, if I remember right, Enoch and Elijah, because no one can keep the law. Moses didn't keep the law, Joseph didn't keep all these people. We could show examples throughout the Old Testament. And the point is that the law isn't something people can keep. That's why we live under grace. That's why New Albion has grace as a value, and that Christ was kind enough to take grace, and he expiated our sins through his sacrifice. But my point to you is that we should not give the law any more authority authority than it's is convenient. And we need to get to the point where we can resist the imposition of the law. When they go to bring 10 people to shut down a business, there need to be 20 there to keep it open. Say you are not entering. This is trespassing. And if those 10 people go get 100 people from the barracks, then we need 1,000 to keep them away. We need to pick the battles that we can win, standing up for what we want. And what we want is to have our lives back and to go ahead and have a better life than what we had before, where we can speak freely, where we can have our businesses open, show our talents, do all those sorts of things that have been forbidden to us, and where we can do what is morally correct. And I think that's where it starts. And what's that going to take? I'm telling you, it's a brush fire waiting to happen. The first time that 20 men stand up against us, and I will tell you what the tyrants will look like. It will probably be state police sent by a governor somewhere. There's a lot of really rotten governors all around the country. You got a good one in Kentucky, actually. Be a good place for you to stand. And, Michigan's got a really lousy one. Maine is no good. I think that. Oregon has an atrocious one. And people have to realize the courage of their own strength. But, people on the right have followed this idea that we must follow the law because law makes society, but law and order. But whose law and what order? Are you following laws that are legitimate? Do they come from the idea that they're serving the interests of the people, the liberties? I mean, natural law taught the idea that God, and no one knows their history. This is why they steal your history from you. Aquinas talked about, if Kenaz was here, he'd be better than me at this. But Aquinas basically put out the idea that you're born into free will, therefore natural law exists to enshrine what the divine intended for you, the choice for you to have. And that's where the ideas of the Enlightenment and liberty came from. Now, they got led really far astray, and I would argue there's problems with that. I kind of like the Puritan way better because we are fond of temptation. But in theory, the foundation of the laws in the United States of America is in natural law, and it's in this idea that free will and free choice, so long as you don't impinge on others, is what should be permitted. And it's the exact opposite of what we're getting now, that we are dealing with red guards who say, you cannot make anyone feel bad, you must be silent. So that sort of compliance is being forced on you. It is your duty to resist. And look, there's a lot of ways you could do this. The right wing is so stupid because it's so individualistic, and you got to be collective. You got to get out of that trap thinking you're a trapped individual. You have to say, hey, you could just say, if Trump doesn't have the guts to do anything else, you could say all his supporters get on somewhere and say, look, I want you to not go to work for 3 weeks until this government becomes ungovernable. Do it and stay home. Get 3 weeks worth of food and sit there. They're doing the same to you, but they still need you. And yet we we who are good and righteous and just and moral, give our labor, our efforts, our time. I mean, look at this. I'm here on YouTube. Those assholes are making money off me sharing truth with you, and I can't go anywhere else because it's too convenient and they make something that's too nice. I stay here because I suck with technology. We all know this, and I can't figure out how to use other platforms, and I like having the larger audience that's here. But we're using a terrible platform, and it's those sort of conveniences we're going to have to give up sooner rather than later. And the good news or bad news is it's going to be taken from us. And then we'll have to do something different. And then what comes from it? I don't know, a fight. Is this the end fight? Are we fighting against a single global system, the New World Order, the beast system, Mystery Babylon? Probably. I mean, it said, like, Jesus said it would be like the days of Noah. And in the days of Noah, technology had gone nuts. People were consorting with demons and all sorts of horrible ideas. I mean, you saw they're literally celebrating Satan on Netflix. I mean, it's right in front of you if you want to see it, you know? And why didn't God help our nation? Because our nation's evil. What do you want me to say? It's wicked. We broke our bonds. Go back and read the Mayflower Compact. Go read what they promised. We're not doing that anymore. So you got to do something different. And we all got to do something different, but we help each other. So I come on here and I try to help. I'm trying to encourage you and inspire myself because you know what? The truth is, I don't feel it a lot of times. I stopped feeling it. But I feel it a little bit. I feel more alive when I'm telling you things that I think are true a lot of times than I feel in my own life, and it's a problem. I mean, sometimes I can be a wretch to be around because aren't we all? We sit around and we look at this thing, be like, what the hell is happening? And some of us are more active than others, but it's just like, what do you do? And then, look, leaders even have it worse. So many of us have tried to come up to the front and doing these things. And what do? They wreck you, or they bribe you, or they threaten you, or they say they're going to throw you in a cage for having ideas. I mean, they'd love to throw me in a cage. Well, I appreciate that, Happy Hound. When I was a kid, I actually used to, you'll appreciate this joke. I used to be either I always said I'd be either a senator or a surgeon, but the truth of it is that, I have shaky hands and I'm not fond of blood. So I guess senator was it. But at this point, I would rather be governor. I mean, I don't know. Every now and then I joke with the idea if someone puts my name on a ballot, I'd love to make some comments about what I think Maine should do, but I can't win an election. election, and I don't want to win an election. I wouldn't mind leading a whole bunch of people who want to take back this state, though. I would very gladly do that, and we could be the foundation of a new, whether it's New Albion or we call it Acadia or a free New England, all of those things. But I thank you for the kind comments, and yeah, no, I'm a thinker, I'm a philosopher, and I'm a pragmatist. I mean, I know how to work the gears of government. I understand skids have to get greased, and I'm not like a lot of people go out there as hardcore ideologues. I have ideas. I have things that can work, but it's more important to figure out how you can connect those ideas to reality. So I put my idealism in books like New Albion, but in reality, what does this actually look like? It looks like a system where towns go independent for themselves, little local guards work with them, maybe sheriffs make posses. That makes it a little bit easier in the transition, and you start pushing governors out, and you start claiming areas that are different because America's lost. I told you when we were doing Coronavirus Central that America died, and that the economic system died. We could go into all the pieces, but it's not important for me to recount that. I don't need to read the autopsy report for you to understand that the system isn't what it used to be. So we could either look at this as a crisis and claw to get things back and beg for things, or we could go ahead, stand up, and say we're going to do something different. And that's it. I'm going to be up here, and whatever flag I have is going to have a damn pine tree on it. It might end up being the red one with the green ensign. You never know, but that's certainly a possibility. Let's see what else we got here. But thank you, Happy Hound. I appreciate it. Any thoughts on the similarities of the French painting Lady Leading Liberty with her breast hanging out and the lady who died in D.C., her most famous picture of breast revealed? So you're talking about, let's see how good my memory is, Eugene Delacroix. That was from the 1830, I think, March of the Paris Commune, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I'm right. I'll have to go back and look and see, because I always like to see. But I am well aware of liberty leading the people, because French history is very interesting to me. I'm a big fan of Napoleon, actually, for a lot of different reasons, even though he's a problematic figure. But, aren't the most interesting ones always that way? It's interesting to think there's a theatrical component to this. There may be a symbolism. There's some people who think Ashley isn't dead. I should say that there's been suggestions of that, and who really knows? I mean, I'm not going to disapprove of this woman's death without having good evidence. But I mean, what do you know? I mean, right? We don't trust the media, right? So this is a part of the story. The media is evil. I mean, if we really want to go into it, actually, give me a second. Let me see if I can find the books. Give me 1 second to get up here, and I'll be right back. I'll be talking so you can hear me, but I will share with you a couple must-reads because you need to get smart fast, and I'll talk louder so you can hear me better if I can find these. Hopefully I can find them quick because it's more fun to show you where and how they came up with these terrible ideas, but you could get most of what you need to know out of just 2 or 3 books. And they're older books, but they tell you a lot more about this. I found 2 of them pretty fast. There we go. Here you go. Okay. All right, boys and girls, you get a homework assignment from good old Mr. Tom so that you understand. If you don't understand, by the way, you don't have to understand. Your understanding isn't necessary for this to actually work. But let me get back in my comfy chair, right? Because I am comfy tonight. I got a nice blankie on me. 3 books to read. How they planned it. Marshall McLuhan, Understanding Media, explains how electronic age is going to destroy minds. Public Opinion, Walter Lippmann, how you can use the press. This is basically how yellow media functions. And the granddaddy of them all, Edward Bernays' Propaganda. So, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, Edward Bernays, pioneered the scientific technique of shaping and manipulating public opinion, which he called the, quote, engineering of consent. During World War I, and he was an integral part, along with Walter Lippmann, of the U.S. Committee on Public Information, a powerful propaganda machine that advertised and sold the war to the American people as the one that would make the world safe for democracy. The one that led to all those other things. Let's see. The marketing strategies for all future wars would be based on the CPI model. Over the next half century, Bernays, combining the techniques he had learned in the CPI with the ideas of Lippmann and Freud, fashioned a career as an outspoken proponent of propaganda for the political and corporate manipulation of the population, earning the moniker Father of Public Relations. It's interesting, the propagandist and a manipulator, self-reliant, is public relations in that, and PR led to HR. Among his powerful clients were Calvin Coolidge, Procter and Gamble, CBS, the American Tobacco Company, and General Electric. And in case you didn't know, General Electric was actually owned by the bank. So, in addition, his propaganda campaign for United Fruit Company in the 1950s led directly to the CIA's overthrow of the elected government of Guatemala. So, if you want to understand it, so in a world dominated by political spin and media manipulation, propaganda is an essential read for all who wish to understand how power is used by the ruling elite of our society. What they do is they shape expectations, right? I'm just reading you these things. The books are out there, the knowledge is out there, but how do you get out of that? You got to go grab a Bible. I got a couple of them here. I don't want to reach too much over myself because then I'll pull this whole thing out. And my Christian shelf is ridiculously large. But anyway, I'm sharing these things with you because these are the things you need to go understand. And then once you understand what you're facing, you just have to cut through it. Don't let them win the debate. And you know what? I've been bad at this. I've tried to be too reasonable because I like to get along. But when someone says something's wrong, I'm just gonna call them on it. And they'll be like, "Well, don't you believe them?" I'm like, "No." And they'll be like, "What do you mean no?" And if I get shut down, I get shut down. And if I'm broke, I'm broke. You know what? If you want to come get me, if you want to pull me off to poverty prison for being the last honest man, so be it. I'm used to being poor. I mean, I've given up everything else. We're in secondhand clothes and secondhand teeth at this point, so it's not like I have any wealth. But you know what? That's fine. I'm happy to die to this world to be working for something better than that. I really believe in that. Oh man. So anyway, so I didn't answer you about Delacroix. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there's a connection. They always like to glorify those. They were mad. The 1830s riots in Europe were really huge, and they were put down by the crowned head. So they've kind of they remember these things and they celebrate their own victories. This is a long battle where people were fighting against, and there's a reason why Germany, Austria, and Russia all got wrecked in the last years because of the Holy Alliance. It was called that against the radicalism that came in, and they shut that down real fast. And that's one of the reasons why actually the key figure, I think if I remember right, was one of the Nicholases, not the Nicholas II, but I think it was Nicholas I. Although I don't want to say that for sure, it might have been Alexander II at that point in Russia. But in any case, they shut it down, and they never forgave him. The academics remember. I mean, these people have a long sense of memory, and they nurse their grievances. It's really terrible. Let's see. We can show small town conservatives are good, honest people and contrast with the academic liberals and country club Republicans. Our movement should create that narrative. That is Trumpism. You know what? That is what it means to be a good person. But don't associate with Trump. Trump was all flash and show. We don't need a New York hustler to be the head of our movement. We need a simple farmer. We need something that looks like I have American Gothic. Make people look like the people. I mean, why do you think I have this big beard and I go around with plaid? I look like the people I live with. I have muck boots that look like, they just went through a trough. Look like who you're like and respect your people. Don't be above them. Don't be just pandering to them. Be one of them. Seek to understand them. I'll tell you a story, and maybe this isn't politically correct story, but our best friends up here, one of the things they had me do is they had me butcher a rabbit. And look, it was a shit test, and they eventually later admitted it, see if I could do it. And I did it because you know what? You gotta respect the life. You gotta respect the way people live. And it's fine if that's not your thing. But if you want to be around people, if you want to be one of people, be one of them. Like I've been trying to earn my Maynard blood because I wasn't born here. I was born in Wisconsin. I grew up in Arizona. Spent years in Pennsylvania, but this is my home because this is where I fit. As a crazy miscreant, half asleep sometimes. That's life in Maine. The way life should be. Take a nap. Okay, let's go back and see what you guys are writing. Sorry for making this shake. That's what I have to do to see it. So odds. Trump's next option, the presidential. Trump has a lot of options. Who knows what he's going to take with him, and who knows? I mean, do you trust him? I mean, I guess that's a question. Do you guys trust Trump? You tell me. Do you trust Trump? Do you think that he's someone who is a tragic figure who cared too much about the democracy and therefore let it destroy him by other people? Do you think he was someone who was in on it, like I've sometimes wondered? Or do you think he's someone who's waiting to play another move at it? I mean, look, you have the options for doing this. I'm with you, simple farmer. I don't necessarily trust that either. I don't point that. I don't know. I mean, people have different ideas. Personally, I don't trust him because I know his background in this, and I feel like he's led us astray. And I don't trust him because of Operation Warp Speed. When I really lost all faith in Trump, if you want me to put a single moment on, it, is when he went for this vaccine thing. I don't trust the vaccine. I think the vaccine is an effort to remake what humanity is and change us. I've said that. I'm very public. I'm very open about that. And if they ever shoot me up with this, it will be against my consent and after I offer armed resistance against it. I'll admit that too. So, I mean, I think we've all decided that he's not the answer. So, if he's not the answer, then he's the problem. But, on one hand, you would think with all the threats being made against him and his ilk, he would fight back just for self preservation. That he's not is extremely troubling. It either means he's an idiot, he's he's too weak to even try, or in my mind, the more likely of all things, he's in on it. And that's just the conclusion I draw. And I know a lot of people disagree with me. Some people who are very smart and know a lot of things. We'll find out. The good news is we'll find out in 2 weeks, because 2 weeks from now it won't matter, and then we're going to be dealing with living under occupation government. And that's fine. I mean, people survive occupation. We can do this. You know, they always talk about how great the French resistance is. Wait till they get the real American resistance. Not a bunch of college kids going around, but people who've been working their whole lives, who have some calluses on their hands, going out there ready to stand for something. Um, yeah, there's a lot of interviews. Speaking of which, let's talk memory holes. You mentioned the Vegas interview. Have we heard anything about Nashville? That disappeared real fast, didn't it? That's a really interesting question. Does anyone find out whatever happened there? Let's see. Hi, Tom, Dane, and everyone. Marina, Raven, you got talent, man. I tell you what, if you ever end up in my neck of the woods, we'll put you to work. We'll make you our spy master. What do you think? You'd be good at it. He'll learn things. No matter what, women need to be part of any of this energy solution, not just a bunch of dudes. So that's true. But here's my thought on that: women shouldn't be fighters. Women should be the ones who inspire their men to fight. Women should be the ones who connect families. I mean, the problem, if you really wanted the truth, the world worked better when women ran the families, essentially, and men ran the house, outside of men ran the external world, women ran the internal world. Because women are made that way. I mean, they're psychologically built to chase around babies. And I don't mean to be offensive in that. I'm not saying women can just do that, but women are detail oriented in ways that are designed biologically to accomplish those ends. You're not allowed to say that. It's true. It doesn't really matter. See, it doesn't matter when I say things, you can either say it's true or untrue. You say, well, I don't agree with that. Well, I don't give a shit if you agree with that. It's where the facts go, and that's what this is all about. It's where the facts go. But with women, we want women involved. We want women who can go out there and who can bring people together. And the biggest thing women can do is inspire their men to courage, because that's what's needed, and I think, women will want safety, but I think women have gotten a raw deal. I mean, we've said this for a long time. Women, once upon a time, they stayed home and they could raise kids and they didn't have to work. We now define work as freedom. We live in this Orwellian crazy world, which is going to be really difficult. And I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good for women. But, they do a lot of great work in organizing. They can put events together. They can pull towns together. They can organize things that are smart. And the only thing I don't think women should be involved in is a fight. And that's just, look, I'm an old fashioned guy. I don't think women belong in what may end up being a firefight. I've never really believed that. There's two places I don't really like to see them: behind the guns and behind the pulpit, because it says in Timothy. I just don't think it works that well, and that's the Lord's. That's the holy word. That's not my word. But I think there's reasons for that too. But that's another thing. But yeah, no, we need them, and we need men and women to stop fighting one another. And the thing is, women act funny. The Karen epidemic is real, but it's because so many are scared and they're following authority figures, and they have the wrong authority figures because they don't have. In the absence of morality, people will follow where authority goes. Yeah, sure, of course you enjoy seeing a lady on the pole. Who doesn't? But does it really make you feel better? Is it good for you? I mean, is it good to live in a world where we live in a cavalcade of flesh, where porn is only a moment away and you can see more body parts than anything out there? How are you supposed to compete? You want to know why women are so insecure and hateful of men? They have nothing more to help. What are my thoughts on Joan of Arc, man? She got screwed, didn't she? What was her name? They used her up to, she's this hero at Orleans, and they burn her as a witch. I mean, it's kind of a terrible story. You know, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to remember what the name of the king was who was in there. Was it one of the Henris? But she was an inspiration to the people, and then maybe that's the point of the Joan of Arc story, that someone goes out there and someone. I mean, there's going to be martyrs. I mean, maybe this woman Ashley will be the martyr that leads out to something bigger. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, if I'm gonna, if you guys are hitting me with random bits of history, I have to think because I know medieval history, but that like area in there, I wasn't great at France. I studied a lot more in Italy, but it's been years. Division of the country was always the point and goal. And you know what? Some people say, well, why do you play into that? I'm like, because we're not one country. I want my friends in Dixie to be one. I think New England kind of should be, with the Maritimes, maybe. I mean, I like working with the Quebecois. If you had a gun to my head and said, would you rather be one with New Brunswick and Quebec or Massachusetts and Connecticut? I'd rather go northward. Just my choice, but I like their way of living better. Lower New England's lost its sense of self. It's just, and it's not all their fault. They chase the money. Everyone chases the money. I don't chase the money. I'm poor and I'm proud of it. What can you do? UBI is meant for people like me. And I tell you what, people think UBI is going to be a mistake. UBI is going to unleash all sorts of people from getting around opinions. It will eventually. Watch this. Maybe rough travel pretty shortly. Yeah, no, you're right about that. What else we got? The House has introduced gun and ammo bans. Oh, I'm sure they've introduced them. Let them try it though. My wife is mean behind it. Right? I'm not saying women can't shoot, by the way. Women probably will fight in this. Just because I don't like it doesn't mean they won't do it, man. Landon, good to see you. I hope all's well out there in Idaho. And Alan writes, Tom, I love you, man. Love your views and your books. Keep on keeping on. I'm gonna be out there, man, and I'm gonna go at some point do something stupid. I mean, I don't know what. I have no specific plans, unless you're thinking. And I'm gonna try to lead something because that's what I do. I can't help it. I was the kid who didn't know how to fail. I was the oldest son in my family, and my mother and father are gone now. Just got to do what I can do. And even if it's just talking to you guys, I mean, I'd like to do more than that, but it's not easy, and there's a lot of liars. I mean, the rarest commodity in all this is trust, and that's what's good about this program. I get to come out here and I honestly open up and share my heart and my mind with you, and hopefully you can. And I encourage you, by the way, any ideas will go ahead and allow people to go out there. Take what's useful to you, discard what isn't, and use it. And I'm happy with that. If you agree with me 80% of the time, and some of it, 20% of it's really useful, then I've done a pretty good job. But we try to keep it real here because why not? I mean, I'm too old and too tired to tell things that are like just fake. Have I seen people making similarities between the January 6th thing and the beer hall putsch? Do we think we are in a Weimar timeline? Well, I'll put it to you this way. Weimar had a couple problems. One, it was an imposed regime on the people that never was supported. That's what happened after World War One. It was imposed by foreign powers, actually, if you want to be more technical, that betrayed the people who had bled for the country, which is also true. And that in Germany, they ran all sorts. I mean, 20s Berlin was as degenerate as like 1970s Times Square. It was really bad, and the Germans went along with other things because they were so sick of this. And they chose to take a different path because that was what was offered to them. And people don't realize this. I mean, I even tell you, you're not allowed to know this, but the SS was founded originally, if I remember right, and there are people here who would know, to actually resist the murder of right-wing politicians. No, I'm not going to exonerate them for all the things they did, but I just want you to know it's important to know the history and the sequence of why things happened, and the history of why and how things happened in Germany, if you're willing to go look and find the actual books, which you probably can't get anymore, to be honest with you. That's why all that's hidden, or it's not as simple. And look, I'm not saying they were good guys. There was a lot of bastards in that time, and there's a lot of bastards in any time in history. My job is not to exonerate or to, what should I say, criticize people. In 200 years from now, we can have an honest conversation about what happened in Germany. You still can't do that now because you'll get destroyed. Yeah, the Freikorps, perfect example. And it's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Richard, that one of the things we're going to see is return of Freikorps-like entities. In fact, they're already forming. I'm aware of some of them, and for different reasons, though. But that's interesting that the monopoly on state violence is disappearing. There's a book. Martin Van Creveld, who's actually an Israeli historian, but he's very good, wrote, I think it's called Decline of the State, where he covers some of these questions of what happens. It's worth taking a look at if you're interested in this, because, I mean, the future is going to be a lot more small armed bands who are standing against, because you're not allowing people any other means to redress of grievances. So they're going to manifest by violence, and the government wants that. That's the weird thing. The government wants a million Wacos so they can build an FBI that would make, what was his name? Berea proud. And that's one of those things here. But yeah, I mean, Landon's right. You should hear both sides of the story. There is a German side to the story, and you don't have to agree with it, but you should hear it and you should consider it because, one of the things that happened was that the propaganda was so insane that we literally couldn't escape our propaganda afterwards. No, government does. You're wrong about that. Look, Mel, I'm telling you, government absolutely loves violence. They love anything that gives an excuse where people are scared and gives them authority. They do it all the time. So that's, spend my take going through old cookbooks and canning. Well, hopefully you can something good. You have to send me something in the mail. We'll see. But no, the people at the top of this, look, governments can be reformed. Power is just a matter of who can employ force. Don't fall too in love with the structures of government. They change them. That's why communists became socialists, became progressives, and then they became communists again. We're right back to that. So, I'm not that much older. I feel older. I'd be in Maine if I could, man. Seems likely to be a safe place. Well, if you ever need a place to crash for a little bit before you come, you find me. We'll set you up. We'll find you a way, man. I'd love to have you up here. So, Penobscot, Prescott Isle was a hangout. Well, that's good if you know the area, man. You should actually look at doing this. Why is Trump being silent? So that's a good question. Just heard Apple and Google are taking Parler down. Is that true? Apple gave Parler 24 hours to go out there and to put in draconian censorship measures. And that is something that could absolutely be destroyed. If that's not out there, they will actually go ahead and do that because they want to do that because that's how they signal to their things. It is almost a communist party. It's interesting. The leftists actually claim Boston Tea Party was left leaning, and there's actually a little bit of an argument for it. It's interesting. It's a different day to argue, but it's one of those things. But if you look at the history of how the American Revolution precipitated, it's a very strange thing that should happen in New England at all, because New England was very loyalist. You look at the history of the Federalist Party, but that's another day and another story. I don't have it in me to go through all that. I would say take a little time to look at some of that history, though. It's a little different than people think. We've mythologized the founders in a way that the people who live contemporaneously did not see them. They like controlled violence they can capitalize on and it doesn't threaten their power. That's very, very true. Mainstream media and technology used by broadcasting is propaganda and mind control technology married. It is, and Raven's right about that, but wait till they start putting the receivers in you. That's what nanotech's all about. Parler, I don't trust Parler. Let me say very clear, and I don't trust Gab. I don't really trust any of these. I kind of trust Telegram. That's why I'm there. But, ultimately, you got to go where the people are, and people keep going through one trap to another. If you look at the people who run these things, and I'll just put it to you blunt, anyone who's too heavily involved with Zionism is not someone I usually trust. And, you can have your own opinions about that. It's been my observation that their loyalties tend to be divided in ways that are not appropriate. And I have no problem with someone being a Zionist and having loyalty to Israel. I have a problem with them doing that and working in control of other countries' governments. Great Reset. No, the Great Reset can work. See, I think people get the Great Reset wrong. Let's talk about the Great Reset for 1 second. It's a great question. The Great Reset is ultimately part of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. You got to read Klaus Schwab's earlier books like I did. The Fourth Industrial Revolution is a world where robots do the work and not people. So how do you get to the Great Reset? You could say, oh, you bribe everyone and get them in it. That's true. Or you terrorize them and kill so many people that people go along with it. And they tend to do a little bit of both. So expect to see mass death in the years ahead. A big war is coming. It's inevitable because it's the easiest way to erase the debts. And a lot of the leadership class are going to want to get rid of the people. And whether it's the war of the state against the people or war of states against the states, that's what they're going to have to do. Because at the end of the day, they don't want to have you around as a liability. They know you're a problem. They do know that, but they want to give you every battle, and they're going to use every little bit of patriotism you've invested to lead you into the wrong battles, whether it's some phony war with Iran, a war with Russia, a war with China. And look, I hate these regimes, but don't think the leadership on all sides aren't always, trying to take that down. So that's what they do, because the war isn't... It's like I said, the war isn't really between left and right. The war is between the inside and the outside. The insiders who are doing that. You see in Orwell, actually, 1984 is a good example of it, how Winston Smith, gets led into, the halls of the party, and the party lives very comfortably. That's what they want. And, it's the old George Carlin quote. It's, and you're not in it. All right, let's see what else we got. All right. Google and Microsoft married China. Yeah, that's true. And remember, China was funded by the Fed. Alan Greenspan was running that stuff. This country reminds me of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. It is, and we're going to have to not make the mistake the White Russians made. We're going to have to unite and have areas pull around. If you're not an accelerationist after this week, you're just a dummy. I'm not. I'm with you, man. I understand that. Let's see. Only bad part, Telegram. There's lots of scammers. Yeah, there are a lot of scammers. I agree. Since I almost get it right ahead of time, what can we expect in the coming months? Stasi like police force. How many do you think they were in prison? Let's do that next show. We'll do that on Monday. I'll talk about what I see in the near and long future. That's a much longer topic than I want to address today. It's a great question. It deserves to be answered. You remind me. If something doesn't overtake it, we'll go there. Liberalism is unnatural. I agree. Look for New Zealand to remain neutral in the coming war. The elites in the know tend to flock there and buy their bunkers. Hey, it's true. And you know what? I'm not going to blame any of you for buying a bunker, but remember, they know where you are. They know who you are. They're coming for you. There's safety in numbers. And even as you prepare individually to survive, make a point to prepare with people around you and consider and be aware of those around. We get picked off one by one. It's, I hate to say it, but the fascists had this part right. It's easier to break one stick than it is to break a lot of sticks. There's a reason why the Senate has it in there. We need to be bigger and broader than they are. And, hopefully this program gave a little inspiration to you. I'm feeling a little better. This isn't usually how I do it, but I think it worked tonight. It was a good show. And we'll go through that. Let's look real fast. She says, severe economic crisis, check. Huge inflation. Oh, that's got to come. Yeah. And confiscation of guns and property. Don't only look at that, though. Just look at one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to take away the idea of ownership of private property in general. That's something they're going to want because they want to take away independent wealth generation. You're not going to have money work the same way either. Credit is going to be something different. Currency is going to come from your behavior. They've already changed these things when they talk about social credit, money is not going to be the same in the future. They're going to say we're in a post-financial society where everyone gets money and we're going to do some things funny. Julie, hey, saying hello from the other side. Hope smart people can find middle ground, sending good karma. Well, it's good to see you, Julie. I'm glad you're here, and it's good important we talk to one another. I support that. Darn sure faces and license plates in DC. You know what? If you're here, we might be long before long. We'll be all on the same side, which is the outside and finding a new center. I love the idea of doing that. So let me say a prayer for you all. I'm gonna go rest. I can't even feel my throat anymore, and my tea's probably cold, so I'll probably have to heat up. But thank you for spending some time with me this evening. And keep safe, man. Things are gonna be funny. This is gonna get worse before it gets better. I really thought for a second that Biden, and the smart play would have been that Biden would go ahead and just try to pull the pieces together and say we're going to do this and have money. They're not doing this. They're going all in because they think they got a window, they got a door, and they're driving through it. So just be ready for that. So, Heavenly Father, I just pray that you lead us to wisdom, that you lead us to truth, that you protect everyone who's here and give us the ability to speak with the wisdom and patience that your Son, Jesus, showed with us so that we may be more effective in the future and that we may work for the safety of one another and in the spreading of your word in goodwill toward all men. Amen. So I don't have a long prayer, but you guys have a very good evening tonight. Eastern Europe's not a bad choice, but if you're going to go, you better go quick. That door is going to close pretty soon. Yins all take care. God bless each and every one of you, and even the lurkers, even the haters. Right? You guys have a good night. Amen and a woman. Right? All right, you guys have a good evening, and oh, if you want, by the way, just and not that I expect you to, but if you can, especially since I'm going to have to buy a new car, the Venmo's at CBC PRV, PO Box 35, Greenville Junction, Maine 04442, and get in the Telegram group because I'm probably gonna get shut off Telegram or off YouTube for some of the things I've been saying. So be ready, and I will do some things there. We'll figure out something else later. So, all right, you guys, God bless. Have a very nice evening. All right.